My grandma had Alzheimer's. My brother's grandma had Alzheimer's. We have other friends and family members, throughout our lives who have been impacted by the disease.
I'm like, really? You're going to make me get up in the morning and go run 5 kilometers? And she's like, no, get this. You get to run 0.5K and hold a beer the whole time. I'm like, say again?
I'm in. Laughter sometimes is the best medicine, and I'm a big advocate of that. So I don't care how dark it is. If it comes from a good place and it makes you feel good or a little bit better, and at the same time, if you're able to educate somebody on some things, it's a good place. There's a lot of stuff that I feel is being hidden or just unacknowledged for profit reasons, and that really hurts me. And I feel that there's a lot of people who can benefit from marijuana.
Did you hear the news? They're actually at the federal level looking about changing at least marijuana to a Schedule 3 drug.
Warning, may contain Alzheimer's awareness, beards and beans, bikini car wash, THCA, and or peanuts.
I am Woodstock.
I wasn't sure whether your brother was coming.
No, I didn't even invite him, to be honest. No, he's always working right now. He just got a new job, so with Boeing. So
cool.
He's kind of like tied down with some
stuff.
I heard
Boeing's moving a bunch of people down here to San Antonio. That's exciting.
Yeah. And executing whistleblowers. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Do you want to start off the podcast talking about that? Let's get straight into the NSA listening to us. But speaking of your brother, we met a few weeks back. We were at a 5K charity event for Alzheimer's, and Rachel said, you have to meet this guy. They have the coolest story. Beard versus Beans.
Beard
is
versus
that it?
Beans. That's us.
So, do you go by Matt or Matthew?
Matthew, typically,
Matthew?
But everybody calls me Skinner.
Okay.
It's easier for people to remember.
Much cooler.
Like the Simpsons, the Principal Skinner, So.
Well, I mean, let's jump right into that because the little I've heard about it, Rachel's kind of told me a little bit about. I heard your story while we were at the 5K, and then I've looked at your website a little bit. Really cool concept that I'm super proud to have you on the show. I want to give as much exposure to that. Just start from the beginning, kind of tell us how you got into the Beard versus Beans and what the heck that even is.
Yeah, so Beard versus Beans is, I guess, a third-party fundraising effort from my brother and I. And the whole purpose is to raise awareness and donations for the Alzheimer's Association. My brother and I are both board members. We didn't start off as board members, but the reason we choose Alzheimer's Association is just because we were personally impacted by it. My grandma had Alzheimer's. My brother's grandma had Alzheimer's. We have other friends and family members, throughout our lives who have been impacted by the disease. So it was a way for us to cope, essentially. There wasn't really anything that we could do personally to make a difference, but, my brother and I were kind of joking about some things in the beginning about, hey, you need to shave your beard, or hey, you need to eat some beans, just brotherly rivalry. And, enough kind of push and shove came to it, and we said, all right, let's go ahead and, start raising money. If I raise more money, you have to eat beans. If you raise more money than me, I have to shave my beard. My brother absolutely hates beans. He doesn't like pinto beans. He doesn't like lima beans. He doesn't like green beans. And I joke the only bean he likes is jelly beans. He's the shape of a jelly bean also, so it's kind of funny. But yeah, we started back in 2017 as a joke. I really just wanted to get my brother to eat beans, and we figured, let's turn it into a competition and donate the money. And I went to the Alzheimer's Association back then. I spoke to somebody, and they were like, sure, you can use our name and you can donate to us, no problem. We had really no support or help at that time. But we invited them out to our event. We held our first event at the Burleson Yard Beer Garden, and we had a bunch of friends and family donate prizes and things like that, and we did raffle tickets. And the first event that we had, we raised over $4,000.
Awesome.
One of the people from the Alzheimer's Association was there. he ended up calling everybody from the office because we're kind of party animals. If there's drinks and music, we're there, right? So we were having a really good time. The rest of the office came out, and we became part of their family, and they became part of ours. So again, all of this kind of started as a coping mechanism, a way to make fun of my brother full time, right? And it really worked out, for the Alzheimer's Association especially, just and the people that we've got to bring along for the ride with us as well, because some people had no idea what Alzheimer's was. Some people had no idea that we were impacted by it. Some people we've never met were impacted by it and got to kind of come into, our world and learn to smile again. I was a personal caregiver alongside with my mother for my grandma, so I saw everything from the ground up. I mean, my grandma used to take care of me, and her progress with the disease was super slow. It lasted over 20 years, which is in some cases unheard of. And the doctors say, the strokes may have prolonged, the disease. And I remember being super little in the car with my grandma and her freaking out and saying, "I'm lost." We stopped by a payphone and she's making phone calls. That's how long ago it was, payphones, right? And it was a wild thing, being young and scared that my grandma has no idea how to get us back home, right? So started from there. And then, being a caregiver, having to feed my grandma, help change her, take her to her doctor's appointments and things. It was really personal. So again, Beard versus Beans was a coping mechanism for us, and it really worked out. We got to make great people like you. We get to have a lot of fun. We take $0 out of any of this. 100% of the proceeds go directly to the Alzheimer's Association. And, sometimes we'll spend some money on some stuff if we're, trying to level up and, take it to new heights. But I'm proud of what we built. Like I said, I get to make fun of my brother all the time. He's my big brother, so it's a good feeling.
So I thought the nicknames preceded it, but you gave each other the nicknames because of the first competition? Or?
Exactly.
Okay.
So, we were trying to figure out what to call it, and I was like, you don't like beans. It's Beans versus Beard. Let's keep it simple. And it really, really worked out. He did not have a beard in the beginning, and I always joke about it, saying how, he likes to steal my identity. I've had glasses since forever, and whenever he got his first pair of glasses, they look just like mine.
Who's the older brother?
He is.
He is.
I've got two brothers. They're both 9 years older than me. So, it's cool.
9 years. That's
9 years,
a good gap.
One's from my dad, one's from my mom, and then our parents had me. So I'm the better. Okay.
So you guys were born and raised San Antonio?
Born and raised San Antonio. Actually, I think my brother was born in Colorado, if I'm not mistaken. My mom lived up there for a while, had a pet owl. I thought that was cool.
No way.
Just add that in there. Yeah, she did. She saved it after a thunderstorm, but yeah, I always like to throw out that cool fact about my mom. But yeah, he's 9 years older than me. I believe he was born in Colorado somewhere. But yeah, I was born and raised here in San Antonio, and off of Marbach Road. So we've got some hood blood in us. Yeah.
That's awesome. I've recently come to San Antonio. Both my wife and I are implants to Texas, but we've now lived here longer than anywhere else. So I don't know when I'm allowed to call myself Texan or not. But
I think you're Texas certified already.
I got.
You have a Tesla truck.
Actually, no, the Tundra is built in Texas too. So one of two trucks actually made in Texas.
Oh, yeah, you're certified.
So no one can talk too much shit on it. Yes, it is kind of a weird looking doorstop, but no, we both have come to San Antonio recently. So we're still trying to kind of feel it out. Still trying to get a feel for the customs and all of that. Still haven't even been to Fiesta. But
that's okay.
I heard it's
okay.
kind of a shit show.
You're not missing much. It's fun to. You can Fiesta anytime. Let's just say that, right? There's some fun festivities, and it's good experience in the daytime. You don't need to stay long. You're good.
Well, the closest I've been to Fiesta was at your 5K. So through the company I work for on the side, we're doing fundraising. I was told by our beautiful Rachel over here that, hey, we're going to go do a run. And I'm like, really? You're going to make me get up in the morning and go run 5 kilometers? And she says, no, get this. You get to run 0.5K and hold a beer the whole time. I'm like, say again?
I'm in.
So did you come up with that, or where did you get that idea?
Yeah, so just for starters, we are at an actual Fiesta event. And if you are going to Fiesta, I think you did pick one of the better events, right?
Awesome.
But as I said, my brother was the one who wanted to do the 5K, 10K stuff. He's an avid runner. He's a big runner in the community. He has lots of friends in that world. And I like to run to the fridge. It's the only place I'm going.
He copies you with the jelly bean shape as well.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'm catching up to him. But yeah, you know, I told him, like, I'm not going to run. Like, let's do something silly. You know, if you want me to be a part of it, like, let's do something silly. And I said, how about we have a sleep-in option where they don't have to come run. They could just sleep. I love to sleep. I'm good at it, you know. And he said, that's dumb, but it's funny and it might work, right? So we added that in, and the people who couldn't come to our event, or maybe were out of city or out of state, some of our friends and family, they loved it. They were like, I'm in, count me in. You know, they would check in and go back to bed, you know, to the event. So it's kind of funny.
Instead of a shirt, you can do a pillowcase.
Yeah, oh, that's a good one. We're going to have to add that. That's a good one. But, you know, I said, well, we got to have something for the kids too, right? Kids can't do a 5K. I mean, they can. Some kids are really killing it out there. But none of the kids I know. Right? So I said, let's do a 0.5K. And he said, what's that? And I was like, it's a few city blocks. You know, we'll figure it out. And then, you know, as we kind of started talking to some people, they were like, you know what? I don't want to do the 5K either. I'm going to do the kids run. And I was like, well, we can't have you run with the kids. So we implemented the 0.5K. And after that, I'm like, let's just throw some beer in the mix with that.
That's
you
what
know?
I'm talking about.
And my brother's like, oh, man, I can't believe we didn't think of that sooner. And it worked, you know. Thanks to you guys and the David Weekly Ohms, we grew exponentially on the beer run side, which was exciting. I kept telling my brother, like, I can't wait for this beer run. And he was just like, we don't have enough mugs. I said, we'll get them. Like, we'll get them. Don't worry about it. You know, just order extra. You know, we know where they're coming from. See if they can double, right? Triple now. And it worked out. But the beer run is my favorite part of it. It's the only run that I've specifically have been a part of with our runs. My brother and I raced last year. He was trying to push me and spill my beer. I still won. I've got longer legs. He's a little shorter. So, you know, I thought his center of gravity would be more beneficial to him, but it didn't. So it worked out. But
well, it was a great idea. So I signed up my whole family. Obviously, not the 5K. I went with the 0.5K because there was beer involved. It's so genius because the alcoholics like me feel like we belong now. And we even got my daughter signed up in the kids run, even though my 10-year-old was too cool to actually follow through with it. My 4-year-old, it was funny. She goes and she's pumped. She's the first one in line and they say, run. And she starts sprinting. I don't think she realized how long it was. And so all these other kids start coming back and I'm like, where did she go? And she's just kind of like slowly kind of like walking back with this just grumpy cat face. And she finally gets across the line and y'all had these awesome medals. You handed it to her. She just kind of like glared at it, walked up to me. And the announcer, was it you announcing?
Sometimes my brother was, and every now and then I'll get on the mic. I don't think I was on the mic this time. I had the camera in my hand the whole time, but
it must have been your whoever was announcing even called her out. Just like, oh, she doesn't look happy. You know, I'm just dying. I got a little video of it, but
we've got a good team. So it was probably Anthony on the microphone. He's usually
okay.
Our mic guy, the hype guy. So.
But fantastic idea. The fact that you can get local breweries involved. Yeah. I do brewery. I can't say the word, but I visit them and highlight different breweries. I'll be going up to Colorado this weekend to do a couple breweries up there. We call them barrel aged everything series because me and my friends love anything barrel aged. But Freetail's one that I need to reach out to, maybe hook up.
We'll get you some info. We've been doing our runs, I think, since 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So each year and each event, we have, a different sponsor. Whoever we can get to participate, we do. So I think we've had Lone Star one year, Freetail, other local breweries around in town too, but Alamo beer. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been interesting. It's really hard getting sponsors for these types of things because there's a lot of 5K runs, and then we tell them, hey, we've got 500 runners, and they're like, oh, okay, well, I don't know if we can donate that much. Let me check, So it's a back and forth game of email after email to kind of make sure that sponsorship works for whoever we're working with. But super important. But yeah, we'll get you connected. Yeah.
Well, I know a fraction of how much work it is to actually put together an event like that. So the fact that you guys do all that, do it not for profit, that just speaks volumes to y'all's, character, and credit to y'all. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. I give my brother all the credit for the runs, really. He basically says, hey, do you like this? Yes or no? And it's like, okay, yeah, I like that. We need to change this. Here's a new idea kind of thing. But he works really closely with E-Dragon Productions, and they're the ones who really help out a bunch on the back end with, getting the route taken care of, printing our shirts and things like that. So it's very much a team effort. But my brother is definitely the captain of the ship when it comes down to all of the run stuff. When it comes down to our main event where we're battling, it's definitely a joint effort, and we don't talk to each other much during those events. I don't even think I've covered much of that, actually, but yeah, it's still a lot of fun.
Well, tell us about the main events.
Yeah, so we've got our runs. We got a 5K, 10K that happens in April. That's called the Run to Remember. And then we have the longest day 5K, 10K in June. So they're pretty close to each other. So
we got one coming up here soon.
We got one coming up as well. And the reason the run happens in June is because of what's called the summer solstice. It's the longest day of the year. And whoever's suffering from Alzheimer's knows that, every day is a long day, whenever you're suffering from that disease. So that's why we have it in June for the summer solstice. But this year, that run's going to be at McAllister Park. We've grown a bit, so we've had to expand. So those are our two run events. And our main event typically happens in October, and that's when my brother and I battle. So we don't really communicate too much, like I said, and we focus on raising our own funds. We have our own donation pages that strictly goes through the Alzheimer's Association. So, like I said, we don't take any of those funds. It goes right to them. But
so, just so I make sure I understand, you guys started this as a competition. So you have a way for people to donate to your side, and then he's got his own separate organization you can donate to, and whoever raises the most has to.
Whoever raises the most wins, and whoever loses has to face punishment.
And so each year it's a different punishment?
Each year is a different punishment so far. So
and the first one was Beard versus Beans, and you kept that going. So what's one this year?
So it started off as Beard versus Beans round 1. The first year, either my brother had to eat beans or I had to shave my beard. My beard in the beginning was super gnarly. I didn't shave it. I just brushed it every now and then and just let it go. So it was pretty rowdy. and I lost that first year. So I had to shave. It was the first time I seen my face in like 6 years or something.
Probably pasty and itchy.
Very white. I was like, this matches my butt. Definitely. Same thing. Just, all that. But it was funny. It was all worth it. We raised about $4,000 the first time, and my beard grew back. So I was happy eventually. I stayed locked inside a room for quite a while until I felt comfortable and confident again. The second year, like I said, we didn't have the runs established yet at that time. And the second year, we did, I want to say it was tattoos, if I'm remembering correctly. All this stuff is blending together. We've done a lot of events now.
Because it's been 7 years?
It's been 7 years, so they all kind of mix up. The next one was tattoos. I lost on that one again. I had to get a tattoo of my brother when he was like 6 years old.
Wait, so a picture of him when he was 6, you got a tattoo of him?
And I don't know. I wish I would have brought that first and sent it to you so you could pull that up. But it's basically him, a school picture of him with his arms kind of set like this. There's an apple in front of him. And, he's got a collared shirt and a blue sweater on. He's got the birth control glasses, right?
Nice.
And a patch on one of his eyes because he had a lazy eye. He was one of the first kids who had laser eye surgery. It's weird. His story's weird, but it's funny. But I make fun of him all the time, you know, because because of that photo, and I try to make it go viral. I really tried my hardest to just, you know, just put it out to the world. And my mom actually was the one who made it go viral. She finally figured out how to log into her Facebook again, and she posted a picture of her with a patch on her eye, you know, mocking it, and she put like hashtag Migueling, and it kind of went from there, and we had like, I don't know, 200 random people from like all over the world. Like the furthest one was Australia, somebody we never even met. There was dogs with patches on their eyes. It was hilarious.
Really?
It was hilarious, but anyways, he either had to get a tattoo of me on his body, and my tattoo version was like a can of beans with my face in it, you know? And then his version was that picture of him when he was a child. And, you know, I ended up having to get that on my calf.
So back-to-back L's.
So back-to-back L's. And, in fact, it was 3 losses in a row before I finally won. So the third year, I had to do an embarrassing calendar. And
Nice.
that's 12 months of me posing ridiculous.
In fact, I have to tell you, don't bring that up anymore, because Rachel's like, you should do one of those. I'm like, no.
I'm telling you, you should, because it got so much exposure. It was ridiculous. Like, I think that was the year where we were like, holy crap, like, we're doing something, you know?
That's awesome.
And I printed 50 calendars. I don't remember what I paid for them, but I sold them all out in an hour. And
wow.
so my loss kind of turned into a win. My confidence level went up the roof, you know? And I'm telling my brother, like, you can't sell 50 calendars in an hour. There's no way. Like, you couldn't do it if your life depended on it, you know? My girlfriend, she took the photos for me at the time. We went to a studio and did a whole bunch of different backdrops and all that. And we spent like 3 different days there, finally finished the calendar and printed, and people are still trying to get it, so I'm like, maybe I'll have to do one again, but do it backwards, right? To
Second edition.
Just like really get ripped and work out. Just like do the calendar backwards to where, you know, either I get more fit as the months go on or I get thicker, you know? So we'll see. But it really worked out, and I think at that time, by that event, we had already raised, I don't know, maybe at least 30 grand by that time. So really started to grow. And I think we have a lot of people that come to the runs, but I think people most know us for those events, just us, you know, picking on each other, because we're posting constantly online, just talking trash about each other. Don't donate to him, donate to my page. Or he puts his donation page up and I'm throwing the link, you know, down. And I even did like a trick on the main Beard versus Beans page. You can either click his face or you can click mine. And for like a whole day, I put my link on his page.
On both of them?
Yeah.
That's dirty.
It was pretty funny.
Dirty.
He doesn't have his page set up on the website yet, just because the donation that y'all made went right here. So you know, I ended up making up that page. But yeah, as you can see, my fundraiser is to honor my grandmother, and then Frank Leonard, who was actually an individual who grew up across the street from me. My dad used to do small engine repair with him, and he had Alzheimer's too. He didn't have any family here, so my dad just took care of him. I would feed him breakfast, lunch, and dinner in the summer. So that was my first experience to seeing how the disease kind of transitioned throughout one's life. So I saw it from the beginning of him to, you know, how he ended up, and it was just kind of like foreshadowing for my grandma, which also actually helped a lot to see how the progression of the disease happened. So I was kind of prepared my mind for it. But yeah, so Beard versus Beans is happening, and we're still growing, and we still got another run and one more event. So we'll see.
So June 21st is the next one that's coming up, right?
June 21st is the next event. Or I'm sorry, June 22nd. 22nd, yeah.
Okay.
And I need to change that address on there.
I'm going to switch it over to McAllister.
To McAllister Park. We're still working on a new logo and a design. That was actually from last year. We did kind of like a Run DMC '80s hip hop theme. So everybody came out with their Adidas gear and like their chains, and it was hilarious.
That's legit. Well, I'm wearing one of your older ones here, or the 2022. I went and did the run, and I got back, and Trey's like, "I got you something." I'm like, "What'd you get me?" And she holds up a bright purple shirt, and I'm like, "Well, at least I got some for the podcast."
My closet is all purple now. It's the color of the association, right? So. But we're proud of what we do. I'm proud of what we do. I'm proud of my brother. I'm honored to be a board member with them. It feels good knowing that we're kind of making a difference and we're putting money back into funding. And a lot of that money is actually staying here locally because of the Biggs Institute that's here, UT Health Science Center.
Biggs?
The Biggs Institute. So it's basically an institution here that's dedicated to neurological disease and studies of the brain. So it's super awesome. We got UT Health Science Center here. So a lot of that funding goes directly here. So like I said, a lot of that funding that goes to the association here for San Antonio and South Texas stays in San Antonio and South Texas. So we're really proud of that.
Well, I've been meaning to get with someone for a while, specifically about Alzheimer's and mental illness, or that type of mental illness. My grandpa, we first figured out that he was getting sick. He was visiting us, and someone was rummaging around in the middle of the night. It turned out to be him. He was trying to get in the pantry instead of his bedroom. We found him kind of crying by himself, and we had no idea what was going on. None of us had ever had any experience with it. Got to the point where, he didn't even remember his wife. We had to go kind of watch him whenever she had to leave. And, I actually have a funny story where I was sitting there talking to him, and, I mentioned earlier before I'd served a mission in Brazil, for just, Christian church. And I was telling him, I'm like, hey, I'm going to go on a mission. He's like, oh, I lived overseas once. I'm like, oh, yeah, where was that? He's like, oh, I was over in Germany. Man, those women, they were really attractive. And my grandma pipes up, Lavon, you were married to me. And he kind of looks at her and kind of looks back at me. He's like, well, still. And he's like, yeah, so what are you doing, Jace? I said, oh, I'm just here saying goodbye before I go on my mission. He's like, I served overseas once. It was in Germany. Man, those girls are and we went through that whole process 3 times, and grandma, she was just like, Lavon, I was married to you. And so I just laughed my ass off, like hearing we could at least have fun with it. But sure. I guess the pain it can bring to people who aren't prepared. And even if you are prepared, it's like, how do you get prepared for something like that? When Rachel brought it up, it was an obvious, that's absolutely support this cause. Let's try to get them on, get some extra exposure as much as we can do to help people out. Definitely go for Skinne over his brother.
There you go. Beard versus beans. Beard over beans.
Beard over beans, always. So on this next main event, is it, do you have a...
So we haven't figured out a punishment yet for the next one. But I lost last year. So I still have to face my punishment for this year, which was a bikini car wash.
Oh, no way. Do you have a date for that yet?
Well, we were actually trying to shoot for this weekend, but we've had some difficulty with organizing a place to do the car wash.
Okay.
We need a lot of water. We need a lot of space because we bring a crowd, right? So, I was joking about it. I was like, this gives me time to fit into my bikini, but I'm not excited about it at all.
Wouldn't be either. Do you have help? Or are you just solo
No,
out there?
I'm going to be solo. And I joked about it. I was like, I need to find beautiful women who want to wash cars with me. And my girlfriend was like, no. Come on. I was like, are you going to help me? And she was like, no.
Maybe you can get some guys to dress up in bikini. Because, if I'm waiting in line to watch you, because I'm definitely going to be getting the Cybertruck out there, get y'all washing that up. I got to make sure it's nice and smooth.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's stainless steel, right? So we got to take some extra precautions on that.
It's fine. Scratch it up. I don't care.
But so we're kind of still focused on that. My girlfriend found like this whole list of car washes in San Antonio, but not many car washes really want to give up a day or any time, right? Because it's money. Even though it's a donation for them, it's been difficult to really kind of hold those things down because they may not even live here. They've got people going in and cashing out for them and all these things. So it's been a process, but we'll figure it out. I really just want to get it over with. But we'll see if y'all have any good punishments for this year. I'm always open to it. We reach out to everybody and ask, so we get like weird requests and stuff, and it's like, hey, it's a family show.
Well, we'll get a few listeners to chime in. Anyone who's listening to this, reach on out, and we'll give you some ideas.
Thanks, I appreciate
this.
That.
This is not a family show, but we'll make sure it's.
And see, we're like right on the edge because my brother has been working for the military forever. He's a family guy, very church going, and I'm just like, nah, we can cuss. But I joke about it, with everything, but this disease and everything that we've been through has made our sense of humor, I think, a lot darker than what it would have been. But again, laughter sometimes is the best medicine, and I'm a big advocate of that. So I don't care how dark it is. If it comes from a good place and it makes you feel good or a little bit better, and at the same time, if you're able to educate somebody on some things, it's a good place.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Yeah. Comedy is something that if we ever get rid of that in our society to where we can't joke about certain things, that's when we start going astray. There should be nothing off limits.
The woke world is changing some things, but I think there's still room for crude humor.
You have to read the room. There's certain people that
1,000%.
You probably shouldn't make dead mother jokes around people who just had their mom die. But
exactly.
My mom's passed away back in 2012, so now you can make dead mom jokes.
It's a hard thing to do on Mother's Day, but wait till the day after. My mom passed away too, but she was. I joke about it. I got a lot of my crude humor from my mom, right? That dark sense of humor. She was a very proper person too, but behind closed doors, I'm like, I can't believe you said that. It was hilarious.
My mom was the most straight arrow, never had a sip of alcohol, never tried a cigarette. Yeah. But one day I convinced her, I'm like, Mom, it doesn't actually say anywhere in the Bible that you can't swear. And she's like, I think you're right. And we looked it up. I'm like, they even have hell and damn that they say in the Bible multiple times. And so for a brief, I think like 2 hours, we were saying damn and hell left and right. And then she stops. She's like, Jace, I just don't feel right about it.
Something's wrong about it. That's awesome. Yeah, but it's a great story now.
I mean, she's one.
That's super cool.
When she was in the hospital, she got life flighted up to Salt Lake, and I just happened to be the closest, family member. So I was lucky enough to have some alone time with her, but unlucky enough to experience her in some pretty intense pain. Yeah. And, I've brought it up on the show a lot, drugs is something that comes up often on my shows, and partially it's because as I was touring across the U.S. and Europe, it came up a lot. It's a part of our lives that I think, unfortunately, we don't talk about enough because there's stigmas around them.
Of course.
But that experience was actually one of the reasons why I try to be way more open about whether it's personal drug use or legalization of certain substances or even getting them off Schedule 1. Is I was sitting there talking to my mom. She was in this severe pain that didn't matter what the doctors gave her. It was a nerve pain, and it just didn't help. And so I said, Mom, if I got you marijuana, I was just desperate. I didn't know if it could help or not, and probably wouldn't really. But there was nothing else I could think of. And I said, if I got you some, would you smoke it? And she said, absolutely. And that alone shocked me because she'd never touched a sip of beer in her life, let alone something that was so vilified. And then she paused and said, well, wait, is it legal? I said, no, it's not, Mom. She says, well, then no, even if it helps, I won't do it. And it broke my heart. Yeah. It broke my heart that we had something that potentially could help out, but because of a misunderstanding of what it is and the laws around it, we have a tool that we just aren't able to use. And sure, it can be abused. Sure, it can be adulterated, but
so can anything.
Yeah.
Alcohol is being abused every day, but I feel you on that. I think there's a lot of room for those medicinal uses and things like that, even psilocybin and stuff like that. On my side, for neurological diseases, those types of things, even, other types of legal mushrooms and things that can be used to build, those neurons and those networks back together. There's a lot of stuff that I feel is being hidden or, just unacknowledged for profit reasons. And, that really hurts me, and I feel that there's a lot of people who can benefit from marijuana and other things, that will take away pain, relieve some stress, or get their mind right again. You know what I mean? But
well, you brought up psilocybin, and we actually now have some clinical trials that have been happening, some studies. I believe the Mayo Clinic or Johns Hopkins, one of the two, or both. And it actually, relates to Alzheimer's. They're using people that have, late death or near death, late stage illnesses, dealing with the fear of death, dealing with the anxiety that comes with being sick or not having the mental capacities that you have. And when you sit down and you read some of these, I guess, the feedback of some of the patients, it kind of makes me pretty upset. I get furious that we have vilified something. Like I said, for those who don't know, Schedule 1 drug is something that they claim has no medicinal use and there's no reason for it to ever be used. They've got psilocybin on there. They have LSD on there. And I believe they even have MDMA. Yeah. All three have had huge success in PTSD, late stage anxiety and fear of death.
Depression. And what's even wilder than that is that these are some things that were used by our ancestors to bring you into adulthood or even cure things like that we can't even conceptualize because there's not data back then, But once again, it comes down to big pharma. I hate it. It
does. It's partially big pharma. I think it's partially just fear-mongering. I read a book called Chasing the Scream. Highly recommend it to anyone who wants to educate themselves about the history of the United States and drug use. And when you talk about global drug laws, it all kind of surrounds the United States. The United States has incredible power through our financial capabilities. And I didn't realize that the U.S. has specifically gone to other countries and said, you either change your laws surrounding this drug or we will not give you money, or we will not trade with you, or we will tariff the crap out of you, right? And when you go into the history specifically of the United States, the laws that were created around them, you look back at the actual data and what the experts at the time were telling the people that were making these decisions, they completely went against all scientific data.
Sure.
And now we have a system that is very misguided.
Yep.
We've spent, I don't know how many hours in the DARE program, which is
I know.
a joke.
Absolutely. I still have like a DARE folder, and I'm just like, I signed this? Like, get out of here.
And I respect people for trying to do something that is going to help others, right? And if you truly believe that someone using one of these substances is going to hurt them and society, then I support you in that belief, although misguided. The problem is we're doing the exact opposite by creating this, I guess, misunderstanding, the stigma, and this banning of these different types of substances. All of a sudden, you're creating the thing that you're trying to avoid, and that's the violent and illegal nature surrounding them. And then you blame it on the drug itself when that has nothing to do with it. It's how we're treating it. It's like prohibition all over again.
That's exactly what it is. Like, even if you go back and you look at scientific studies on cigarettes, You know, I mean, they were hiring doctors to say, hey, these aren't bad for you. Like, you know, they had people that I've been smoking for 60 years. I'm 100 years old. It's fine. You know, like, you know, Camel Joe on the front of, you know, selling to kids essentially, you know. And then, you know, recently I was looking at this study. I can't remember who had wrote it, but the gentleman who was talking about it, he's a big mushroom guy, used it to kind of help his mom. I can't remember his name either. He was super cool, but he used like things like lion's mane and psilocybin to kind of help his mom, you know, with her neurological diseases as well. And it helped her. And even stuff like lion's mane, which is readily available, it's stuff that they don't educate us in and say, hey, this can fight amyloid plaques, which is a main factor for, you know, Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. And I just don't think they want that knowledge out there because it's not profitable for them. And that's really the bottom line. You know, I always say, you know, let's I love alcohol, but I would much rather see a world with marijuana than alcohol because I mean, sure, you can abuse marijuana, but you're probably not going to black out and kill somebody on the road, you know? And
no, in fact, they've done studies to where they've done sober alcohol and marijuana.
Yeah.
And you tend up being safer on the road because you're so paranoid. You're like, oh no,
I don't want to get pulled over. You're like,
cops know. They
I'm driving slow because the wind feels good, you know. But you know, again, it's big pharma, and I think, and it's weird because I was at a meeting with the CEO from the Alzheimer's Association not too long ago, and we were at a hospital here in town, and one of the nurses there ended up asking a question to the CEO, and the CEO was mentioning, hey, we got this 10-year plan that's going to be helping communities and things like that. And I'm like, man, 10 years is a long time. I get it. You have to start somewhere. But, you know, they were, for a time period, they were really putting these new drugs out there that were approved by the FDA and approved by Medicare and Medicaid, you know, and they're really pushing these things. And it just kind of made me sick. And it felt like she knew a lot more info than what she was telling us. Like, I don't know. I feel like there are cures out there, or somebody has figured out, you know, these golden rules to fix these issues, these neurological issues, you know, even with, you know, Elon Musk's Neuralink and stuff like that. These are things that they're implementing to help fix some neurological diseases, right? And claiming that they can help fix Tourette's and, you know, different types of diseases that will impact that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I feel like there's so much being hidden. I felt like she knew more than she was even saying, and she didn't want to say. I don't know. Maybe it's a conspiracy theorist in me, but like I felt it, you know? Like,
some conspiracies end up being true. And like a few to name, sugar industry, they paid off experts. I'm using my air quotes for those who are just listening. They paid off experts, scientists, to lie about the data, and therefore we have the diabetes and heart disease that we have
corn
today.
Syrup.
Exactly.
You know, all that.
We have, you already brought up the cigarette industry.
Yep.
Tons of money in that industry. They paid off people to do it. Marijuana has had study after study that was done incorrectly. We know for a fact that they were done incorrectly, yet still to this day, the government, if you have possession crime, and I know this from personal experience,
it's federally illegal.
They make you take a class, and it teaches you about these studies that we know are just absolutely false.
Just bogus.
And when I ask a congressman, I'm like, why isn't this talked about more in Congress? He said, it's not talked about at all. It's the last, who cares?
Yeah,
I'm
they
like,
don't
what do
care.
you mean, who cares?
They don't.
He's like, we have more important things to talk about. And I would highly disagree, because this is just low-hanging fruit. This is something that is going to affect our lives immediately. If it's not you personally using it,
somebody
the
around you.
neighborhood you're in, or the kid or old person or anyone in between that could either benefit from it or is getting harmed by it. And both camps need to be educated on it. And we
There's
can't,
two sides of a story all the
exactly.
time. Yeah.
So we know for a fact that these conspiracy theories can end up being true. And I mean, Dope Sick, the story around opioids and the crisis that we had.
Oh my God.
That's a very fresh and very painful example of how an industry that can make a lot of money has an incentive to make more money, and they will go at a lot of lengths that are very
to
illegal.
secure it and make sure that it continues to be profitable. And they go through legislation too, paying people off left and right because they got the money. Everybody's using it, right? And I guess now the new thing is fentanyl.
Yeah,
You know, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's coming from China," and I'm like, "You're still selling it. Doctors are still prescribing it." Like,
well, I
what's
worked in the
deal?
healthcare industry for years. I used to stock the anesthesiologist drugs. I would calibrate their machines, and fentanyl was one of those things we would use daily, right?
Wow.
It's not a bad drug.
Yeah.
It's just very, very, very potent form of morphine and opioid, and you just have to dose it correctly. But it is insanely addictive because it feels so good. I've had it during surgeries before. There's nothing wrong with that drug. It's like anyone that you talk to that's really big on psychedelics, they have a saying. It's dose, set, and setting. What's the dosage? What's your mindset? And where are you doing it at? And it doesn't matter what the substance is. If you have an appropriate dose, you have appropriate mindset, and an appropriate setting, then it's a great substance. Arsenic's part of it, you know. Dose, set, setting, enough in an apple to not kill you, you're fine. You go a little bit more, you're going to die. Same with water. But what we really need to, I think, all agree on, regardless of whether you have a religious background and you feel God doesn't want you to, whether it's alcohol, marijuana, or whatever, you can't disagree with the concept that we have to educate ourselves about it, and banning anything is bad. Just banning outright is never a good idea because it's always going to be able to create a black market, and then the people that are maybe on the margin that don't have someone to educate them, they're the ones that are going to pay for it in the end. And we all have that on our hands.
Yeah, they're the news story that people talk. Oh, this student, great kid, you know, caught in a bad spot, you know, was shot and killed over a bag of weed or something, right? And it's just like very, very negative. But they don't tell you the good side about it and the pluses and the benefits medically about it. And I don't know. It's a shame. I wish there was more we could do about it, and it's just like, I guess we just got to sit and wait. I mean, you could talk to your Congress people all you said, but, you know, they're not worried about it, you know?
Well, actually, did you hear the news? They're actually at the federal level looking about changing at least marijuana to a Schedule III drug.
So I did see that there was a bill that went through the Senate. I knew it was going to the House. I'm not sure where that's at now.
Republicans do control the House, so whether you agree with it or not.
Update.
Let's see here. April 30th, 2024. News outlets reported that the Drug Enforcement Aid Administration, the DEA, planned to move marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 under the Controlled Substances Act. Let's see here. According to the reports, the proposal will be reviewed by the White House of Management and Budget and will then be subject to public comment. So that's really where we're at. At least they're talking about it.
Yeah, and I know that there is some, I went to a little head shop the other day, and I walked in and they had, jars of bud in the counter, and I'm just like, wow, what's that? And they're like, come over here, let me show you, like, how medicated do you want to be? And all different strands and stuff.
How medicated do you want to be?
That's literally what they told me. I walked in and I said, "Hey guys," and then like this one guy was like, "Nothing much, just rolling a blunt." And I'm like, "Where am I?" Like,
welcome to Texas.
No idea.
That's so
cool. And
I'm
just like, "There's no way. Like, there's no way. Like, tell me about this stuff, right?" And he was just saying how, well, this right now isn't THC. It needs to be decarboxylated, so you have to burn it in order to turn into THC. And I said, oh, okay, so if I just bake it, I can make some good treats or something. Right? It seems easier. And he was like, yeah, I guess, but you could just smoke it. And I'm like, okay, that's fine.
That's the best loophole ever. We're going to take the substance that is banned and change absolutely nothing about it other than call it its actual name.
Yeah.
So it's the THCA technically is legal in Texas
Yeah.
for now. Hopefully this podcast doesn't go viral and Mr. Abbott. Yeah, exactly. But that's hilarious because someone actually gave me a big old bottle of capsules full of cannabis, right? And I said, what is this? They said, oh, it's amazing for inflammation. I'm like, is it going to get me high? They said, no. It's just THCA that will not get you high unless you heat it up to a certain level. Yep. And I'm like, what's the difference between this and something I'll go to the smoke shop, the dispensary in Colorado that'll get me high? And he smiled and he said, literally nothing. But it does have a different effect. There's no psychoactive effect if you take it. And I can tell you from experience, it is amazing for inflammation. If you have any issues, whether it's headaches or back pain or nerve pain, eat marijuana. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
In fact,
it first.
We were doing
150.
What was that podcast? Oh, it was with 1915 Farm. They have a regenerative farm. We're talking about feeding cows marijuana, and you actually found. She pulled it up. We didn't end up talking about it.
That's the kind of beef I want to eat.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
But I like how you said decarboxylated.
Decarboxylating. So like that's how your body basically can intake it into your digestive system, and the THC will be metabolized, and have a reaction for you.
So it's a fancy way to say heat it up.
Heat it up, exactly. Right. So like anybody who's had those magic brownies, that's all that's happening in the process. It's being decarboxylated. Okay. If you were to just grab a bud and eat it, nothing's going to really happen to you.
Except your inflammation.
Except
will feel
your inflammation.
amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Your inflammation inside may go away. But yeah, decarboxylation, if you want to get some of those, THCA and put it into a nice baking tray for 150 for about 15 to 20 minutes.
Sounds like you have some experience here. I thought you were reading that for a second. I'm like, that's not up on the screen.
No, but
all right, there we go. It occurs between 200 to 245 degrees Fahrenheit.
So I've just cooked it longer.
I have a new use for my Traeger now.
Yeah.
Smoke.
The same thing, with what are they? A vaporizer. It does the same. It's the same concept. It doesn't burn through it. It just vaporizes the bud. You can still use that. Put it in some oil. Put it on your pasta, whatever, on your bread. But yeah, one of the things that he told me though is that was the way that they're able to get this bud and to still sell it here legally. And it's not because of the THCA thing. It's because they pull the bud out early and they don't flush the plant out before, and they don't hang it to dry or anything like that. They just pull the plant, cut it, and ship it. So apparently throughout that process, from cutting the bud and hanging it, and then typically they'll put it into a jar and burp it to really to formulate the THC better. I guess it's kind of like wine. I guess they put it in a barrel, right? But from my understanding, that's what he was telling me, that kind of they get away with that law or those rules to kind of bring it and still sell it. But
because it was just saying that if you do cure it for a while, then it can naturally decarboxylate, which is... I'm going to see if I can keep that in my brain. Say again?
So you got to pull it as a baby plant.
Yeah.
Oh, so
yeah, exactly. And then but I was told the same thing. So if you get that bud and you let it dry a little bit and you put it into a jar for about a week, and every day in that jar you open it just once, it's called burping, and then you close the jar back up and let it just sit somewhere dark and just wait. It's supposed to intensify it if it's that type. But that's typically how, the process is done with regular THC. And I like regular better still.
So the stuff you can get legally in Texas, it is not as potent?
It's definitely not as potent. But, I mean, it does its thing.
If you do your own curing, though.
If you do your own curing, it can, potentially. I didn't notice any significant changes personally. But yeah, I mean... It's close. It's so close, but it's kind of
probably better for people who are being introduced to it, right?
And I like it for that purpose. I like that random people can go in and like kind of a culture shock, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, this is marijuana right here. Yeah, kind of, but I mean, there's so many different strains, kind of a different breed of a plant, essentially, right? But I don't know. I like that it's being introduced to the community. I mean, these places are being put right into the center of neighborhoods. and I like that. I think, I mean, there's a Walgreens on every corner, selling Oxycontin to people with the prescription, but I'd rather, instead of an Advil, I'd much rather,
Instead of a Bud Light.
Absolutely. I mean,
Gonna turn you trans.
I love.
I shouldn't have said that. Cut that out, Adrian. I'm just kidding. That's just a joke.
I love
Get over it.
alcohol, but I'd much rather be out with my friends at a bar smoking, to be honest. I'm just gonna be more giggly, like I'm gonna be able to get home safe, I don't have a hangover in the morning, I like that.
I don't I don't do it as a party drug because I'm on that side where I get a little bit too in my head every time I smoke.
Sure, yeah.
That's more of a relax and be able to just not think about all the other stress of the day.
Let me handle this real quick and play some video games.
Yeah, I have some talk to my wife about the video games. I don't get to do that anymore. And she said once I get a whole year scheduled out of the podcast, I'll be able to pick up the controller again. But, I've really active brain. Like I can't shut down my brain. And so, and they've studied this with PTSD as well, although in general, you will not sleep as well if you smoke weed. If you have a very active brain and those dreams keep you up, then it can be beneficial to your sleep, right? So people who have experienced war trauma, if you smoke before you go to bed, it'll diminish the vividness of your dreams. Some people say once they quit marijuana, their dreams come back in this 4K. And I've experienced that as just a self-control thing, whether it's coffee, I'm doing sugar right now, marijuana.
Too much is too much, right?
I think you should always take a break just to see how you... I
agree.
Yeah, you should never go 5 years every single day doing anything. And
except brushing your teeth.
I don't know. I'm actually on the fence there. Anything that someone's going to make a crap load of money off of, we should question. And honestly, 9 out of 10 dentists get paid to tell you to brush your teeth. I'm not saying don't do it because that's gross, but I don't think we need to do it as much as twice a day with fluoride, with flossing and all that. I'm like,
who actually has this time in the morning?
Get a toothpick, do a deep clean once a week, and then if your breath smells, use a mint.
Yeah, I feel you on that.
I'm disgusting, by the way. I also shower less than most people probably. I shower when I need to.
You're like, I only wash the top half of my body with soap and let the water run down. It's fine.
I don't know how many times I've done just the pit and the crotch. And I'm like, I'm good.
We're dudes. It's okay.
All right. Don't judge me, people. All right. We got what do we got here, Rachel? Results. Those with high PTSD scores. Okay. So this is going back to my claim. Let's see if I was right. More likely to use cannabis to improve sleep. Those with high PTSD scores, and for coping reasons more generally compared with those with the low PTSD scores. Cannabis use frequent...
You got this.
Cannabis use frequency was greater among those with high PTSD scores. He used... I think it's because it's purple. The purple on... there we go. Sleep-promoting purposes compared with those with low PTSD scores or those who did not use for sleep-promoting purposes. Okay, so it says... Conclusion is consistent with prior research. This study found increased rates of coping-oriented use of cannabis. So that's not necessarily saying they're getting better sleep. That was saying that people with higher PTSD scores personally felt that it did help them. So maybe it's all bullshit and it's all just...
Is this just a small summarized section of... What was that you were just on? Did they have the full...
Yeah, this is the one right here.
ScienceDirect.com...
Have you ever read those studies? They're so long. I mean, you're talking about 89 pages.
So in college,
on a one day.
I was doing pre-med in college. So I every once in a while had to read through some actual studies and then write my synopsis. And that was one of the big reasons why I now understand that I'm a moron. Is I'm like, what did I just read? Research has found that individuals with more severe PTSD are more likely to endorse cannabis to improve their sleep. So it's not necessarily that it helps.
Sure.
It's just that it's like me. I'm talking out of my ass and saying, no, you should do it. I'm not saying I have PTSD, but I've seen some shit. Let's see here.
I've never been diagnosed, but maybe a little.
I mean, what is it they say? The hardest thing that's ever happened to you is the hardest thing, whether it's I broke my nail or I saw this guy die in front of me. It is going to be or can be traumatic. So
Sure.
I'm not saying that some PTSD is worse than others. I'm sure it is, especially if you go multiple days or weeks with being in a violent situation like
sure.
war. I can't even imagine.
No.
Let's see here. Because marijuana is linked to relaxation, there's been a growing interest in how it might benefit certain ADHD traits like restlessness and impulsivity.
You're
So,
talking about your brain going a million miles an hour.
Yeah, I've used it for these purposes, for sure. But I'm an advocate because of these reasons.
Yeah. And that's one thing that is like, again, I always do disclaimers on my show because this is not for kids. I do not want people to just willy-nilly go out there do any substances. I think you should actively educate yourself and try every substance in a very positive and responsible way. Now, some people can't use things, period. That's why at the end of I do a little, instead of a synopsis of who's going to be on the show, I do a little warning. And I originally did that because I wanted, my potty mouth to not be heard by my Mormon family.
I got you.
But at the end of that, I always put and or peanuts. Like warning may contain peanuts.
Okay, I got
and that's
you.
because it does not
like
matter what we talk about. Some people, it's not good for you. And you will die or be miserable or maybe have a psychotic break.
Maybe you have an allergy.
Exactly.
Something as simple
right?
as that. You know?
Don't sit on a bee. Don't eat some peanuts. Don't eat that, crawfish or shellfish or whatever it is.
Watch your dosage.
But for other people, like, get on it. Like,
Yeah.
it's going to help you out. Who was it? I was listening to, I think it's Young Jamie on the Rogan podcast. He claims that he can eat like a 30 milligram edible and it does nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'd like to see that firsthand. I'm not saying he's full of shit, but I've heard
had
other
some
people.
experience with that. So edibles are hit or miss with me.
Oh, really?
Yep. Sometimes they're spot on, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm there. And then other times I'm just like, how much did I spend? What's going on? But yeah.
Has it ever been too much for you?
I've never had too much.
Oh,
never.
boy, I've seen some demons. That's for sure.
I've never had too much, but once again, it's watch your dosage, right? But I'm ready to get there. Let's see what happens. Yeah, next trip to Colorado, we'll see what happens.
I definitely think that edibles is the best way to do it if you have time.
Yeah.
What do you hear that like beep 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 beep? Beep? I wonder what it is. I got some new XLR cables. I've been traveling with these on the road.
These are cool. These are pretty sturdy.
I had like 8-foot long ones, and so they'd be all coiled, and I was getting a bunch of feedback. In fact, I got the Cloud Lifter that's supposed to, it's like a preamp, and it's helped a lot, but also it was causing some other interference.
Yeah.
So I mixed that around, and I'll almost be, high quality one day.
You're there compared to a lot of people out here. I really, really dig your setup.
Thanks,
it's
man.
awesome. Like, I've seen a lot.
Yourself.
yeah. I know. That's what he was saying. Like, you killed it. I really like your setup. I mean, there's some small things, like I know in terms of like your interface on switching and stuff like that I can recommend.
Absolutely.
But other than that, like, you're solid. You've got your editing team. You've got, guests coming on. You've got the website situated. You're on Spotify, Apple. Like, you got it all.
Yeah, apparently people don't upload a lot of video to Spotify because I got to notice that I was top 3% of all Spotify video podcasts, which is nothing because I guess no one just puts it up on there. So, no, we definitely are growing. It's been fun to see the growth. The fun part is actually how much international growth there is. It probably helps that I have an editor in Romania. Shout out to Adrian. My brother lives in Germany, so that's and I've, doing that little tour in Europe, definitely got some exposure there.
Sure.
Hard part is I speak English, and a lot of the people I'd love to get on, especially here in South Texas, it's very difficult to understand. I have some great people I know from Honduras that they came over here due to some just catastrophes that happened down there, but still working on some English. In fact, I had a Venezuelan. He escaped Venezuela Dude, this is crazy. He used to scuba dive for a living. So
Okay.
his job was to dive under giant like cargo ships and make sure they weren't smuggling stuff in and out of Venezuela.
Wow.
And then he went out to a job. There was like a few extra guys there all dressed up in like suits and stuff. And he was about to go dive down to check his final spot, and they recommended he not do it. And he took his job seriously. He was a Mormon, so, you know, Mormons,
Yeah.
very trustworthy, whether you believe in their God or not.
Sure.
He decides to go dive anyways, even though everyone on the boat said, no, don't worry about it this time. He goes, finds two dudes stowed in this hole with crap load of drugs. So he has to write the report. He gets a visit, and they said, hey, we're going to make your life easier. They got his boss and said, hey, we're going to pay you, and you don't even have to dive anymore. Just take the cash. We're going to give you an extra, like, you know, 100 or 1,000% of what we normally would pay you, and you don't even have to dive. And this guy said he wouldn't do it. He's like, he didn't feel right about it.
Sure.
It wasn't the right thing. And so his home ends up getting shot up, and people started hunting him down, and he had to flee to America.
Wow.
Crazy, right?
That is wild. Kudos to him. His heart's in the right place.
Yeah.
He's trying to do good, and people are trying to hold him down.
So thank goodness, you know, the Mormon church, they have all these missionaries going all over the place. He had a contact in Utah. He made it to Miami, eventually made his way over to Utah, and people let him mow their lawn for a while, to him just telling his story.
Wow.
And eventually got his wife up there, and it's crazy story. But
I can't top that.
yeah, I have a very mundane life compared to some people. But
And my friend Alex, his dad, he had liver disease, and he was doing edibles, and they told him that he needed to stop doing marijuana, or else they weren't going to fund, you know, the program that he was in for these testing medications. And he was like, I don't even want those medications. You know, I'm on their tests, you know. So he had to back off of them. He passed away, unfortunately, but it's those kinds of things that really they don't sit well with me. You know, it's just like, it's not just because it's not benefiting you personally. It's like, hey, this is somebody who could definitely benefit off of it, or have just 10 good minutes of happiness or a good conversation with you again. You know, it's just like, it's frustrating sometimes. So, yeah.
yeah, end of life care is something I've unfortunately got to experience a couple times. Once with my mother, and then once with a close friend of mine. He's actually younger than me. He got testicular cancer. And just seeing at the end where, you know, you get to a point where it's not about trying to save their life at all. It's about, let's make sure that they at least enjoy the time that
They're
they
comfortable, happy, you know, as much as they can be. I remember with my grandma, you know, here's some morphine, you know, give her morphine. And we held off till the very, very end as we possibly could, even though we knew she was in pain and she was still on medication. But it's just, we've seen instances where it's just like, that's it, you know, and they tend to go a lot faster. But it hurt me to see, like, hey, here's a syringe of morphine, you know, give her this to be happy, you know, and feel comfortable. And it's just like, seriously, like, there's got to be some other way, you know, there's got to be other things. And I wish we could have explored some of those things a lot sooner for her, you know, but unfortunately, it's just where we live in right now. And it's a political game, man. Everybody, and right now with election season coming up and all that, like, and what's crazy is I saw a video the other day, and they were talking about how I think like 50 or 60% of the world right now is in their election period.
Really?
You know, other countries and states. Yeah, maybe we can look that up and see if that's true. But it kind of boggled my mind and made me think, like, man, like, there seems like it'd be a perfect opportunity for a lot of diabolical stuff to go down, you know. All it takes is money, and money's fake anyways. Like,
The mine
Yeah,
is
I know.
actually this year. It wasn't 2020. It's this year.
it's this year. Like,
The world's gonna end.
yeah. Okay, there you go. Yeah. Their calendar was off. Or our calendar's off. That's all. Theirs was right.
So, you know, we're talking about what we can do about legalizing some things or at least
Yeah.
changing laws. We're talking about elections right now. There was actually a vote maybe a year or two ago here in San Antonio. It was kind of controversial. It was not only going to decriminalize marijuana, but it was also a what was the word? It was cops would have be able to release people. They'd arrest them, but then release them on the spot, not have to book
That's
them.
right.
Do you recall what that was?
I don't recall the bill, but I think it was, we're not going to arrest you for like anything less than an ounce or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what the weight was, but I'm not sure if that ever went through. I thought it did.
It got
but...
voted down. In fact, there were a lot of people that surprised me that very pro marijuana, smoke every day, which I don't, but they were vehemently against it. And I don't know the full reason why, but they were saying it was the catch and release or whatever it was called. They were afraid that was going to like just destroy our cities, and small mom and pop businesses would be ran out. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it surprised me how vehemently they were against that.
But yeah, I know, here in Texas, we've got, I think, the largest gathering of private prisons anywhere, if I'm not mistaken.
In Texas?
In Texas,
yeah.
And or at least in the South for sure. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with it too. Like I said, it's a money game. It's a political gain, and why not have somebody else in jail and let other people pay for it?
You can't blame people because, like, I'll talk to, let's choose an industry, oil and gas, for example, right? And so you have, whether you believe in climate change and whether it's caused by CO2 or not, we have a lot of people claiming there is. But when you go to work and your job depends on a certain industry, it's not a matter of right or wrong.
Nope.
It's obviously right if it means you are supporting your family.
Absolutely.
I got to keep my family alive. Or you don't want to be ostracized because you go and you're talking around that coffee pot and you say, oh, I love Biden, and all of a sudden you don't have a job, or at least people aren't supporting you. So, we have to fit in. We are a social being. Humans are all about other humans. We cannot live alone. So I try not to judge people when they're like, oh no, I'm never going to use that electric vehicle and they say something, or I'm never going to support this and they say something. As long as that part at the end that they fill in is in line with how they live their lives. If you truly feel that God is telling you to act in a certain way and you live your life accordingly to it, and you hold other people to those standards, I will respect you for that. What I can't stand is hypocrisy. And although I'm guilty of it, everyone is. Like, I try my hardest to live my life the way that I truly think will be best, not only for me and my family, but for those around me. And sometimes I have to check myself because, let me put it this way. When I was raised, in the LDS church, you have a great roadmap to how to live your life. You never really have to question anything because they kind of have the answers for you. And they're pretty good logical answers. They're really about health, no alcohol, no tobacco, eat meat sparingly, all things in moderation, and honor your father and mother, don't murder people.
Sure.
You're like, yeah, that's all good stuff. And when you start to look at different cultures, and when you start to maybe give other cultures credit where credit is due and say, hey, that's different than the way I was raised, but you can't all be wrong. That's when life starts getting really hard because all of a sudden you have to think again. You're like, wait, I don't have all the answers. Unless all these people are evil and I'm right and just everyone else happens to be wrong. But if that's not the case, and I actually have to start thinking about their perspective, their base cultures, what truly is going to make this world a better place, that's when everything gets very, very difficult. And I just don't think a lot of people want to go through that in their life. No,
I think, and I don't know, I think right now we're at a point in life where things are made so easy for people, and almost handed to us in a way because of technology and new things that people don't have to think anymore like they used to. And I think it's just making it easier for bad people or corporations or organizations to really take advantage of those types of things and keep people down, in a sense to where like, hey, you don't need to think. We've hired all the scientists, all the people, all the doctors, everybody that can tell you what you need to think. And I think that's made us put us in a bad place. I mean, even with AI, you don't need to hire somebody for this anymore. We've got AI that can do it, or like you don't even have to speak anymore on your own podcast. Have AI do it. We'll even have your voice, like,
which is crazy. I've seen some clips and then they're like, which one's real?
Yeah.
And I don't know.
But, I think a lot of it comes down to that. They don't want us to think anymore.
I like that. Rachel pulled up. What did it say at the top? The death of critical thinking will kill us long before AI.
Yeah.
Like, who was I talking to the last podcast? You saying I'm afraid of AI, and I said why? And she gave me a few reasons, and I'm like, well, here's all the reasons I'm not. Yeah. Because first off, everyone who's talking a lot of crap on AI is going to be losing out on a lot of money.
Sure.
One of her reasons was
I use it every day.
She said, well, like people are going to lose their jobs. I'm like, okay, but get a different job. But the thing that I like thinking about AI, and I've said this a few times, it puts us into the emperor role. And by that, I mean,
it does.
There's one guy on top throughout history that has a shit ton of resources. He can sit there just thinking, and then he's like, all right, you take care of this, you take care of that, you take care of that. And the normal guy never had that option. Now, the normal guy is the emperor. He can say, hey, AI, run all of this. What normally would take a team of people, sure, we're taking jobs away from people, but those same people have access to this same technology. Sure. And so it's really just who's more adaptable, who has the ability to have foresight.
Yep.
And that's who will benefit from all these new technologies. Yeah. And that's not new. It's been the same way for millennia.
There's always new technology that comes to make life easier for some of us. And I'm an advocate of AI. I think that it has its place. I love Terminator. It's a great movie. I think, the reality is like you were mentioning, critical thinking is dying. And those people who are afraid of it, I feel that maybe they lack a skill, right? And they're afraid to kind of, I guess, hit that straight head on because maybe they're just answering a phone, or doing their customer service. And now AI can do that. Well, was that really a skill that you had? Or, I mean, can you draw? I don't know.
Or it's maybe they want to just sit on their laurels. You always say never rest on your laurels. It's like, I don't want to learn new things.
Yeah, they're just too comfortable already. And I think that the creation of AI has made me more of a critical thinker than ever because in the beginning I was like, oh crap, I saw, these headshots coming out and, I'm like, wow, that doesn't look good. I don't like it yet, but it's only getting better. It's only improving and it's improving itself, which is kind of crazy. But it just made me think outside the box and say, okay, well, where there's AI now, I need to learn how to use this tool and make my skills better. And where it doesn't have a place, I need to conquer it and own it right now, because it's coming, everything's being integrated with AI these days, whether it's how we look up data, how we're utilizing it for art or creation, business, spreadsheets, everything. I mean, it's something there, but, in the end, once again, I think it's just that loss of critical thinking is just really sad to kind of think about to where, even my kid, she's just like, oh, like ChatGPT it, and I'm like, come on, like, or what's crazy now is even Google. I remember back in the day, I'd ask my mom, hey, what does this mean? Go look it up in the dictionary. It's on the shelf. You just got to Google it now, and that leads to like a false retention of knowledge, right? Like you think you got it and then next week it's gone because we don't need to retain that information. We can always Google it and find that information right at our fingertips. But, whenever all this talk about, elections and China and war and all this stuff, like it was kind of freaking me out, man, because I was like, oh man, what if they're trying to attack our power grid, they're trying to attack our water system, like I don't have the skills to find my own water, you know? Like, I've seen the cartoons with those sticks, you know, to find water or whatever. Like,
I got to do that the other day.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah, I'm so excited about my stepdad is like this genius guru of like, he has a ice machine that he's kept alive for like as long as I've been alive. He's just
awesome.
like making the new parts. He's one of those like handyman guy.
Sure.
And he was using some dowsing sticks to help me like find some He's like, well, you got to use this product for electricity, and then you can find water with this type. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I thought that
we
was
need to learn
voodoo.
more from those people.
Yeah,
because it's lost art. Really, it's lost trade. It's kind of. It's like we don't know how the pyramids were made. Somebody knew how to build them, but that information was lost or destroyed or hidden from us, right? Like, I really like those types of things and getting those types of information or lessons from people who do have knowledge or have been through it and aren't using computers, you know, for their skill set. And I don't know. I think that's cool. The world needs more of that. So.
Well, I definitely need to get him on the podcast. He is huge into what most people would call conspiracy theories.
Oh, man,
he would say they're true, 100%. He's tried to convince me of a few things. And the conclusion I always come down to is like, the only way I could ever get to the point to where I knew that was true or not is if I went down a rabbit hole I'd probably never return from. Yeah. So I'm just going to choose to live my nice polished life for a while.
Makes you angry.
Yeah.
It does. I go down those rabbit holes often, and I'm like, WikiLeaks, let's see what's on today.
Well, it's like, I don't know. I was talking to a good friend, like, friggin' love the dude. We went to college together. He was like my best friend for years. Dude sat me down and told me he believed the world was flat. And I'm like, okay, tell me about it. Like, let me be open-minded. Like, doing this podcast has really helped me, like listen intently to people's, like, opinions. I'm like, yeah, okay, convince me, man. And he starts talking about it. And he's like, man, it's so great that, you know, you actually believe in this. I'm like, whoa, pump the brakes. I didn't say that, but I'll listen. I'll like, give me some data. I'll, you know, pump it through my little pea brain and see what comes out the other side. But I always come to the same conclusion. Anytime there's this crazy conspiracy, or I'd say crazy conspiracy theory, but something like the earth is flat, it comes down to there having to be a giant cabal of thousands, if not millions of people that would have to blatantly lie throughout their entire life. And I don't see how that's possible.
I think some people just can't math. You know, I will say this. I think there's a lot of things that I've seen, especially when it comes down to like the flight patterns. I like aeronautics a lot, and they're like, well, why do they have to go this way and go back and fly this way? And I'm like, that's really curious. I don't know. Like, it makes you think.
Most of the time, it's so they're not too far away from
exactly. Most of the time, it's like, hey, they need to refuel. There's the FAA has some rules and regulations as to why you can't do this.
That's what they want you to think.
Exactly, and then they got that. And I like hearing those silly notions, but when I hear flat Earth, I'm just like, there's math or some science lost there, you know, for you to be believing stuff. And I don't know. I'm not a big fan of those type of conspiracies, but I'm just like, I like the ones where the government's done bad, but nobody wants to believe it, you know, like.
Those ones are not only possible, but plausible. Like, going back to this Chasing the Scream book I was telling you about, like the beginning of how we treat drugs, it was one guy. One guy completely changed the landscape of how we view drugs, and it was because of a traumatic event he had as a kid. He had it set in his head that we need to eradicate that. But then he himself just was completely hypocritical when it came to the use of different substances. He went against everyone's advice, all of the data that we had, yet somehow that got stuck into our system, and then it turned into like a religious thing. And now everyone who feels like they want to be a good person and they're raised that being a good Christian or a good Muslim or whatever is what you need to be a good person, you're already on one side of an argument that never even got to start because of one dude's messed up like visuals of how a substance, and it wasn't even like a specific substance. He just blanketed all of it. He was for prohibition, and he said it worked. And I'm like, wait, what? It did not. there were less people drinking alcohol, and I'm like, yeah,
but we got faster cars.
Yeah, it worked. We got faster cars. We got the
No, what they were drinking, like embalming fluid and crap like that. You know,
yeah,
like
it was
did not work.
Safe for anyone unless you were rich. That's what all of these things do. It helps really rich, educated people because they're still going to have some badass booze and drugs. But then all the poor people like us, we're going to be drinking out of sewers and having fentanyl in our cocaine.
Embalming fluid and all that. Demolishing brain cells.
So 1920 to 1933, Prohibition. Do you know what's funny? I learned this in Utah history. Even though Utah at the time was by far predominantly Mormon, when they voted to reverse Prohibition, they were the final vote. And they voted to overturn Prohibition because they felt the freedom was more important.
Sure.
Which is very
it's very true. And I feel that, like, whether something is good or bad, I feel that every person, as an American, as free, should have the right to say yes or no. You know, I think that there's some things, obviously, that shouldn't be in some people's hands, but you know, for the most part, I think if it's beneficial, all the way, all day. But it's always
pull
subjective.
That back up there. I wanted to make sure I wasn't full of crap. Was that? I saw you up there. It was 1933, December 5th. Utah became the 36th state to approve the 21st Amendment to vote. The vote that ended Prohibition.
Is that where you grew up in Utah?
Yeah, well, I was born in Utah, but grew up mostly in Colorado, Wyoming.
Okay. I'm curious, though. The reason I ask is because here, you know, we have Texas history. Did y'all have, like, Utah history or Colorado history?
So I was in Colorado for kindergarten through, I think, second grade, so before history. So the state history I got was Wyoming. We actually learned about the Mormons in Wyoming because of the hand carts that were going across. I was a popular kid that day in history class. And not a lot of Mormons in Wyoming or Colorado for that matter. So I was always
Wyoming,
like the
by the way. It's a
awkward
beautiful
guy.
state.
Gorgeous except for where I lived. So the west side, one of the most beautiful areas. You got Yellowstone, Jackson Hole, all that. I was over in Laramie where it was negative 40 in the city, and I had to wear a windbreaker in June because it was too cold. But we had a really badass wrestling team and track team. All of our sports were amazing because we trained at the altitude where most Olympians train, and that's just where we lived. So we would, any endurance sport, we would demolish people, just demolish them. I felt like I could jump higher. I did high jump because the air was really thin.
I'm like, when I get new shoes, I feel like I can jump higher. Where I was at.
But yeah, I moved around a lot. Like I said, I was born in Utah. Before I was 2 years old, I had moved a couple times. I lived in 2 different places in Colorado, 2 different homes in Wyoming, moved down to Arizona for a year, back up to Utah where I graduated high school, ended up doing a year of college in Utah, went down to Brazil for a couple years, came back to Utah, moved like a dozen times before I eventually graduated college. So I belong nowhere. I'm a mutt.
You're a person of the earth.
I'm a citizen of the globe. But, I was telling you before we started, like my friends joke that I'm a chameleon because I fit in, and that's why.
That's cool.
I never fit in as a kid. I was always I never felt like I belonged. And when I grew up, I realized that I was the problem there because of my self-conscious nature. I wouldn't let people in. And then I got college roommates. We went to high school together. And he's like, yeah, man, I really liked sitting next to you during math class. And I'm like, oh, shit, I don't even remember sitting next to you in math class. And he's like, yeah, I thought you were kind of a jerk. You would never talk to me. And I'm like, shit, I thought I was the one that was being picked on. And it like that along with my buddy who believes on the flat earth taught me when we first got Facebook, he would get pokes. Remember pokes?
Oh, yeah.
He would get all these pokes and likes all the time. And I'm like, man, why are you getting all those pokes and likes? And he's like, well, Jace, I poke them first. They're just poking me back. it's like this light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, oh, if you want people to talk to you, you have to talk to them first. What? So
The
kids,
first step of logic. You're like, I get it.
But, well, man, I have very much appreciated the conversation.
I've had a lot of fun here. Thank you for having me.
Hopefully we can get some awareness for only Skinner. Only beard, no beans.
That's right. No beans. Say no to beans.
No beans. But I really, really enjoyed your race, mostly because I got to drink beer. But also myself, Rachel, we all have been affected by Alzheimer and different types of. I'm not sure if dementia and Alzheimer are different or
yeah.
it's all
So
the same.
dementia is kind of like engulfing all of it, right?
Okay.
So Alzheimer's is a form of dementia, right? Parkinson's disease is another form of dementia. You know, there's lots of them, right? But yeah, so dementia is kind of the umbrella for all of it, all neurological, you know, in that aspect. So, but I'm so glad and grateful that y'all came out. I'm glad that you had a good time. I saw y'all come in with y'all's own ice chest, and I was like, I like these guys.
That was all Rachel.
Yeah, it was epic. But no, we really enjoyed y'all being there. You know, you helped grow our run so much, especially on the beer run side. And y'all were super fun to hang out with. Y'all got a cool gig going on. You know, everybody in the office, I got to kind of meet a little bit with them briefly. But, you know, anytime, you know, we'd love to have y'all, you know, for the other runs, especially for our main event in October. It's a good place just to come out. You don't have to donate anything. You just come out to drink. You know?
I'm down.
It's a party. It's a big party. And that is going to be, the next one is going to be our round 7 is what we call it. Cause kind of COVID stopped everything, you know, for a bit.
Yeah. I feel
back
that.
then. But
So
yeah.
where can people go to find your information?
So yeah, they can go to beardversusbeans.com. It's kind of going to be the best spot to kind of start off, unless, you know, you're on social media, type in Beard versus Beans, you'll find us. But Beard versus Beans is going to be the main spot. We're pretty active on Facebook, and Instagram follows right behind that, but those are our main platforms for the social media. We have them all, but primarily use Facebook, you know, so yeah.
All right. Well, everyone get out there. We'll get some links from you, throw them in the description. Can't thank you enough for coming on, and I'm sure we'll be seeing each other a lot here soon.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope so. And let me know if you need photos for your homes that you're building, man.
Absolutely. I'll hit you up.
I am Woodstock.